Welcome friends to another Dune video. Today we follow Pardot Kynes as he arrives on Arrakis, how he sells the Fremen on his dream and how he becomes one of them. Let's get straight into it. Pardot Kynes saw the desert world of Arrakis as seed capable of magnificent growth, provided the environment received the proper care. The Harkonnens only plundered the planet for profit, or other opportunists such as smugglers and water merchants also took advantage of it. And whilst doing his work, Pardot comes across a battle between the Fremen and the Harkonnens. The Fremen are young, the Harkonnens are armed and shielded. Pardot thinks he can't let the forces of the Baron kill the workers, and the Fremen are the tools he will need to remake the planet. Silently he aided them, severing one man's spinal cord, and he also ended the next one's life as well. And when the rest are finished off with the Fremen help, they communicate. One Fremen is injured and uses a med pack to make sure he has a steady heartbeat, and Pardot also saw the blood coagulate faster than it normally would. One of the Fremen he saw also dug the eye out of one of the Harkonnens, and Kynes wonders if he has made the right choice. Then the bodies of the Harkonnens and the Fremen, both injured and uninjured, get into Kynes' car and drive it off without him. But one Fremen did remain behind, and that Fremen says to follow him, and Turok says they have a water bond between them, and he takes Kynes to his sietch. Within the sietch, being treated, is a young Stilgar. Kynes smelled the dense aroma as he went inside. As the book tells us, the aromas of the sietch were dense, rich and redolent with humanity, smells of life, of a confined population, of manufacturing, cooking, carefully concealed wastes, and even chemically exploited death. Kynes sees how advanced the Fremen are as he moves through the sietch, through the side caves and lava tubes and tunnels. He sees luxury carpets and cushioned tables, metal and stone all clouded in the cinnamon smell of spice, overlaying the strong smell of unwashed bodies. And then, in a large hall, Kynes is introduced to the head of the sietch, Haenar, head of Redwall Sietch, their nabe. They exchange words, and Kynes is asked if he challenges Haenar's leadership. Kynes replies no, and they talk more, and Kynes shares his dream with him and with the people in the sietch, from old men tending eater supplies to grandmothers operating solar ovens. And as he does this, he sees the activities that go on in the sietch. As the book tells it, the bustling activity around the sealed caves astonished him. Some workers trampled spice residue to extract fuel, others curded spice for fermentation. Weavers at power looms used their own hair, the long fur of mutated rats, wisps of desert cotton, and even skin strips from wild creatures to make their durable fabric. And of course schools taught the young Fremen desert skills as well as ruthless combat techniques. Kynes is given a tour by Turok, and he asks if he can establish a weather station there. He goes to gather some equipment and saw what had been done to many of his possessions, because the Fremen saw items as communal, and Kynes had not yet bought into that aspect of them. Meanwhile, the elders debate his fate, and it's decided that he must die to protect the sietch, as he works for the Emperor. Later, Stilgar finds Kynes and thanks him for the rescue. And for what he has done, Kynes is given a fixed crysknife dipped in the water of life. A waterman, under the orders of the elders, goes to collect Kynes' water. And as he approaches Kynes, he hears the man speak of the dream of Arrakis, about turning it into a paradise. And as he approaches to take Kynes' life, Pardot raises the crysknife, but the waterman thinks that if he kills this man, he will destroy that dream, a dream for the Fremen's future. So instead, he sees Pardot as a prophet and turns the knife, his own knife, on himself. The actions of the Fremen convinced others of Pardot's value, and he lives. Kynes continues to work for the Emperor, but is secretly allied to the Fremen now. Later, he was to be married. The first time an outsider was married to a Fremen, and it was to Stilgar's unwed sister, Frith, a Saidina leads the party into the open sands. Freeth wears the Fremen black robes of a woman betrothed, and water rings in her hair, both hers and her husband's. Kynes had donated water from his ground car to obtain them, and dancers moved in front of him like a sandstorm. In another form of acceptance, his eyes were now the blue of the Fremen, and the Saidina speaks a series of words in Chakobsa, and then he was married to Freeth. Later she becomes pregnant, and with his child being on its way, he commits to make Arrakis a paradise that would take many generations. He estimates 300 to 500 years. Buying into his dream, the Fremen begin to refer to him as their prophet. Then he goes on a long journey far to the south. Stilgar calls the distance 20 thumpers. Kynes had found, before this journey, a large salt pan, which has convinced him he has now no doubts the planet had once had open water, and on this journey he sees depressions that might have been ancient lakes, and then on land he and the party pushed on towards the Antarctic Circle, where worms could not travel. No one explored these areas, and here Kynes revealed a vast treasure, evidence of the dream, a secret camp, and he saw there were hot springs running here through the use of solar mirrors and magnifiers, and this water had nurtured plants. He tells his wife they have done this in less than a year, and he also saw the start of palm trees. Later someone arrives and tells Kynes the number of Fremen of Arrakis is 10 million, and that he now has a son. In the deep south, away from the eyes of the Harkonnens, the Fremen had begun to seed life in the desert, such as poverty grasses along the downward sides of dunes, anchoring them across the dominant westerly winds, and this caused the slip face to become stable. And then the windward face of the dune would grow higher, but the Fremen kept pace with this and replanted. Kynes thought of his plans for Arrakis as the book describes it. He and his team would plant tougher sword grasses, add processed chemical fertilizers, build wind traps and dew precipitators. Later, careful not to pressure the fragile new ecology, they would add deeper plantings, including amaranth, pigweed, Scotch broom and dwarf tamarisk, followed by familiar desert icons such as a saguaro and barrel cactus, and the Fremen also introduced insect forms. Populations of tunnelling creatures to aerate the soil. He then takes his wife to see what he has accomplished. As they entered the cave, she could smell water. There were flowers, shrubs and trees. She was amazed. And she could also hear the sound of running water, such an alien sound to Arrakis. Irrigation systems controlled it to keep this new life alive. Freeth, his wife, said, "This is paradise." Kynes waved expansively at the enclosed grotto and says, "Remember this well, my wife. All the Fremen must see this. Dune, our Dune, can be like this in only a few centuries." And now, friends, I turn things over to you. Drop me a comment if you enjoyed the video. If you've got something to say, let me know.